So, of course, in the wake of the big story that now is, I guess, a little over a week old, when the House of Commons decided to honor someone who we later found out had served as a Nazi in the Second World War, I think it's fair to say that all hell broke loose. There have been a lot of apologies. It
And
cost the
rightly
Speaker
so.
of the House, of course,
Hmm.
his job. The Prime Minister was taken to task for this as well. But it begged the question that was asked then. So we're going to follow up on this now. And it seemed like a reasonable question to ask. What was this person, as a Nazi, already doing in Canada?
And living
How is he
peacefully
living a
and
regular guy's 98
quietly.
years old? He's
Yeah.
lived here since the end of the Second World War. How did that even happen? And are there others, now that we found this out, who may be in the same situation? So that's what we're addressing here today. By talking to David Mattes, he's senior legal counsel at B'nai Brith Canada. He is on the line. David, thank you for being here this afternoon. I understand you've been involved in this kind of idea of finding out who are here, where do they come from, how do we allow them in the country. You've been doing this for quite some time. Is that correct?
Yes, since the 1970s.
What are we doing 50 years later, still not being able to have this information?
It's, I would say, an indication of the size of the problem. We've had so many people come here that shouldn't have come here, that they've constituted a significant lobby for doing nothing. And of course, I mean, it's not just them, but there's people who supported them, people who argued in favor of them, people who thought this issue shouldn't be raised. There is a substantial constituency still for doing nothing on this issue.
And yet a list exists. I understand from your work that you did back in 1986, the Deschênes Commission, there's a list of 240 alleged Nazi war criminals who are probably still living here in Canada if they're still alive. Why do we not have these names? Why is this not public knowledge?
Well, the list is even longer than that. I mean, the
I
Deschênes
bet.
Commission had a list, but there was a war crimes unit that was set up that had over 1,000 files that we're trying to get hold of. And the historian Howard Margolian estimated there was maybe 2,000 people in Canada who fit that description of people complicit in Nazi war crimes. The I would say now we've got a combination of reasons, but when we've tried to get the files, what we've got is a huge number of files, a huge number of theoretically applicable legal exemptions, and the incapacity to process these files to look word by word whether any of these exemptions apply. And what we need is some sort of blanket exemption decision to say we're going to release all these files. And that's what a parliamentary committee recommended 25 years after a file has been created. The documents in it should be released. And that's what the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, of which Canada is a party, recommended. Give Holocaust remembrance a priority over all these exemptions. We just need to get them released without the necessity of going through every word exemption by exemption.
Mm-hmm.
Are you're describing a situation here where you have a parliamentary commission saying, yes, we can do this. It's 25 years later, yet for some reason it's still not being done. Is there, in your estimation, someone holding this up for a reason? Why is this happening, do you think? Or why should I say, is it not happening?
Well, I mean, the government hasn't said we don't want to do this because the people that we've talked to are basically applying the present law, present policy. The parliamentary committee recommendation is relatively recent. It's just a few months old. And the government, unfortunately, as we can see, moves very slowly.
There's a quote that is really quite magnificent that you gave to CBC, that you said along the lines of, when we're remembering the victims, we've done a pretty good job. We've done a lot for that, but when it comes to the murderers, we've failed. Can we rectify that at this point?
Well, I think that's, of course, particularly important because learning about the victimization is, of course, important. But if we want to learn the lessons of history, if we want to remember the lessons of history, if we want to avoid repetition of the mistakes of history, we have to find out about the murderers, about what happened, why they did it, who they were, how it could have prevented, what we knew beforehand. The historical record that would be useful in preventing repetition of the mistakes of the past is largely hidden from us, and getting that information has contemporary relevance because we're still faced around the world daily with genocide, unfortunately, and because of I mean, it's different if the record wasn't there, but it is there, and so we really should be able to look at it.
When you say hidden from us, I mean, that's of concern in and of itself. Hidden from us, why? For whose benefit?
Well, of course, different people will have different reasons for that. The Obviously, for the people who are implicated, it might be for their benefit. For the people who justified or argued for the arrival of these people in Canada, it might be for their benefit. As I say, unfortunately, there is a constituency that doesn't want this information released. But I also think, I mean, it's not just that; it's also the present system, and it's not just the Holocaust record system. The present access to information system has collapsed. It's not working. I mean, the information commissioner, Carolyn Maynard, has said as much. We've developed a non-functional system, and it's beyond me to suggest how the whole thing could be reformed, but we need at least to extract these sets of records from that unworkable system and release them now.
If ever there were a time to do it, it is now, off of this controversy. And yet I feel like politically it would make Canada look so much worse on the world stage that, Nazi war criminals are here and have lived happily here for many, many years now. So that's got to be a big part of why the work is not getting done.
Well, I would say to a certain extent it's the opposite. I mean, the fact that the Canadian Parliament gave a standing ovation to somebody from a Nazi SS division looks very bad in the context of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, because the Russians have weaponized it as propaganda against Canada and Canadian support for Ukraine, and it's fed into their narrative that they're invading Ukraine as an exercise in denazification. And I think we need to make our own effort of denazification in order to counter that narrative.
If I could go back for people, because of course things like what happened last week in Ottawa reopen history to some degree in Canada after the end of the Second World War. There were people taken in from various countries, and as we're finding out now, many of these people ended up having served in the Nazis, or with the Nazis rather. What was the policy at that time? How did this happen back then? Do you know?
Well, there's a historical report written on this by Alta Riddell, which itself has been subject to a number of unnecessary deletions, but it's been released in part. And part of it was simply that there was the Cold War, and there was a premature end to the Nuremberg tribunals. There was a notion that we had to somehow placate West Germany by not being too hard on Nazi war criminals, which the West Germans themselves never asserted. They when they got their own government, they started prosecuting Nazi war criminals, but the Allied powers at the time were in control of West Germany, and they basically thought that there was this new Cold War, and the Nazis, of course, played that card, the anti-communist card, saying we can help you combat communism, there were some people who basically just overlooked the Nazi past because the Nazis were allies in the battles against communism, and so that was one component. Also with this Galician division, this was a group of the Nazi Waffen-SS division, which was caught in the West after the war, and the British in the territory where they were, the British were controlling, had this group, didn't want to send them back to the Soviet Union because they realized, I think correctly, that they would have been executed. So, and they didn't want to keep them either, so they persuaded Canada to take them. Now, I personally think that Canada at the time should have said no, but that's how we got them.
Yeah.
We're going to run out of time, Mr. Madison. I just want to make sure I ask you this because, as you said, you've been working on this since the 70s. This is your life's work. Do you think you'll see what you hope to see come of this in your lifetime?
Well, there's certainly a lot more attention to this now than there has been in a long time. And we have, of course, Mark Miller, who's Minister of Immigration, who said that something should be done. I mean, he doesn't control the file, but it's useful to have somebody in cabinet to say that. And I also know that this has reached the attention of the Prime Minister's office in a way it never did before because of all the publicity around the mistake about Rhoda. and Hunka. So my own view is there's a definite possibility. I mean, my attitude is one has to keep on trying, but I am hopeful that something will happen in my lifetime.
David Mattis, Senior Legal Counsel at B'nai Brith Canada. To your point, I mean, now with all the focus on what has happened, what did happen a week or so ago, you could think that would only help and not hinder this effort. At least you would hope so, wouldn't you?
Well, certainly that's my hope. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, I've kept on working on this file because I have not given up hope, and I think even after all the perpetrators and all the victims have passed on, it's important to keep this historical record alive, and not just as remembrance, but to learn of it, to avoid the repetition, because
Yeah.
this whole dynamic of hatred and mass murder continues, as I said, to
Mm-hmm.
this day.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Mattis, we want to thank you for your time.
Thank
Very much
you.
appreciated. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me.